Good evening, everybody. Welcome to KC Happy Hour, episode number 42. My name's Xander Clements, your guys' host. We weren't streaming anything over the weekend, which means there was no controversy, no wrecks, nobody mad at each other, nobody hating each other. But there was a lot of news that came out over last week, and so we'll cover that here in our first segment. I do want to give a shout out to a couple of our new partners that have signed on with us. First, before we get to them, our current partner, Kart Store USA, has been a long-standing partner with us dating back to December of 2021. They're running a special right now where all you have to do when you make a purchase on their store at kartstore-usa.com is go and give them a Google review. It doesn't have to be any kind of review. You could say they're the worst, you could say they're the best, but if you give them a Google review and then you send a screenshot of your review and email them, replying to your receipt, they'll knock 5% off your purchase. So if you want to support our partners and support the people who help support us and support karting by investing back into the sport, go ahead and check out kartstore-usa.com. They're a long-standing partner with us. We just renewed our agreement with them for both happy hour and for our broadcast. So I wanted to give them some love. And we got a lot of new partners here that have joined on here starting this month. You'll see those in the commercials when we get to that later on. Let's go ahead and while we have everybody here, we'll at least introduce our guests and then kind of dive into a few news pieces. So let's bring everybody in. Brandon Jarsocrak is down in Destin, Florida. It is officially happy hour. I saw that Corona before we went live here, Brandon. You're enjoying yourself. How's the beach, man?
Oh, it's good. Finally good to have some time off. Had a weekend off finally and enjoying it with some family. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and good time.
Ryan Norberg is here with his high-quality camera, but it looks like the internet's hurting you a little bit. You're about as pixelated as us, so I'm taking some pride in that. Oh, never mind. Trevor just switched it. Now you're high quality again. Now you're flexing on everybody. Ridiculous. Ryan, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. We story for you over the weekend. You were banging some gears.
Yeah, man. First shifter race. Come on. First win, too.
Man. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a club race, dude. You're whooping up on guys showing up with old tires.
And masters as well.
Yeah. Ridiculous. We got Connor Zillish in here. He's getting ready for his streaming debut. Look at that mic Connor's got, dude. Some big-time upgrades over there.
Yeah, now I just need the 4K camera like Ryan, and then I'll be official. I still got Connor, the one Xander sent me a year ago. Thing is beater.
Oh, all right, man. Listen, it was $100, and I had to send it to all you knuckleheads, okay? I even sent one to Ryan. He doesn't even use it anymore. At least he could ship it back. I could send it to some guests or something.
You haven't asked for it.
He could. I haven't asked for it. We do have a couple of our guests here joining us. Chris Wehrheim returns to the show. Chris, we appreciate you coming on. The new hat. When can everybody get the new flow?
Now. It's been on the site. New gloves.
It's been on the site?
Yeah, we launched our OS1 karting glove that's online now in dealers worldwide. We have a few dealers in Europe and now in Australia also. So, yeah, check out the website.
Sweet. And joining us for his happy hour debut, although really it should have come a long time ago had it not been for how late we got this show started, because he's about the other half of the North Carolina super success story that Connor's a part of, and that's Brent Crews. Brent, how are you doing, bud?
I'm doing great today, and I'm glad to be here.
All right, man. So let's go ahead and we'll at least cover a little bit of news. I'm just going to touch on a few things we had, and then there was some big news that came out. Two major things, one with USPKS, one with SKUSA. That's where we'll go to the panel, everybody, give them some time to talk about it. So let's at least go through what we do know right now that's kind of dropped over the last week. First and foremost, in terms of upcoming races, the California Rock Challenge, there was a big announcement over the weekend. They were set to go to Cal Speed Karting, ultimately decided to cancel that event. And I was talking with Chris a little bit before the show, and Chris can kind of elaborate when we get through all of this news here, more on this, and we'll touch back on it. But ultimately, there's a lot of racing going on in California. The biggest turnouts have really been at the Tri-C Karters, which is more than anything a club-based series, but there is a lot of back-to-back racing in SoCal especially. And so Andy Saisman and the group with CRC decided, you know what, we don't want to continue to just bury into a market that's already saturated with a lot of races. So they're focusing on their event in Pat's Acres, which will be coming up later on this year, I believe in late June, if I'm not mistaken. But that was some big news because that was one of two touring series, regional series championships that we had to cover coming into this week. Brandon Jarsocrak's obviously in Florida right now, but before he gets over to Florida, he's headed over to before he gets back home out of Florida, he's headed to New Orleans. The CKNA South Division has its next round of the championship at NOLA Motorsports Park. They just breached over, I think, 100 entries going in on pre-entries as of a day or two ago. which is really good for a series that only has a handful of classes, only focuses on the 206 format. There's a couple different divisions where you can kind of double dip when you get to the senior ranks when it comes to the light, medium, and heavy. But as a whole, that's really a one age group series. So for them to be pulling 100 entries is strong. I don't want to downplay that at all. And compared to where they were last year, they're up about 30-40%. It's their first time really branching out of the state of Florida when they go over to NOLA. So that's a top tier racetrack. They're going to be running on a slightly shorter layout, which is what normally is run for the club. You can kind of see it on the layout right there. They have the way that the barriers are, the bottom corner of our screen turns into a rental track for about 0.4 of a mile, 0.7 of a mile, nearly 3/4 is what they'll be ended up racing on, which I'm sure obviously helps being able to let that track run rental carts and the race cars, which is cool because if they've got that set up and that track, I talked with some of the guys over there when we were down there for the SKUSA Pro Tour and the TSRS events. They're hoping to get club racing going back there again, and that's a racetrack that is a top-tier facility but hasn't really gotten the big club following that you see at like GoPro Motorplex or Cal Speed or Newcastle or the whole state of Texas and some of the other areas that have been hotspots for karting. And so it'd be great to see that city and that multi-million-dollar racetrack and facility get more racing. So kudos to them for working with CKNA to pull that event off. I hope the event goes good. I hope Brandon has a good time. That's at least one race that is happening this weekend. And it's branching out to give more four-cycle guys and more 206 guys kind of levels up. If they don't run the TSRS series in the region, they've now got another race coming their way on the south side. Now let's break off of that, go off the races from this weekend to the news that broke over the week. First, everybody was kind of hoping for it to happen. It's the marriage and divorce saga almost that everybody wants the two parents to get back together because no matter how everybody talks about it, everybody loves the Rio when it comes to SuperNats. There's just something about that place that gives it the Vegas vibes. And it came out this week. SKUSA officially announced there's new ownership for the Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino. There was rumors for a long, long time the place was getting sold, was getting demolished, and back and forth. And obviously last year, with all the events getting rescheduled after COVID, it pushed SKUSA to a different weekend, and ultimately at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. They are back on their traditional weekend, the weekend before Thanksgiving. It's going to feel already the year is starting to feel like we're back to normal. The mask mandate just got lifted off of the airlines, which it was about to expire anyway, and they just canceled it before having the renewal meeting. Obviously, politics, whatever. This is not politics. This is just racing coming back together. I think this is something that everybody wanted to see. Everybody's excited to see. We're on the normal weekend that we are. It's 2 weeks after the Rock Vegas event, and it's back at the Rio, the place that has made SuperNats kind of super. So that's coming back November 16th to the 20th. Back on the normal weekend, Superkarts USA and the Rio. It just seems to always go together. So that's cool to see that come out this week. And kudos to SKUSA for making that deal possible and bringing everybody back to to Vegas and right next door to the Strip. Now, the other big news that came out from the other major IAME National Championship, if we talk about the big three for shifter racing, you could say the same big three for national championship racing. And that's, of course, Rock Promotions, whether it's the Florida Winter Tour, Challenge of the Americas, or really ultimately Rock Vegas. And then you have the SKUSA Pro Tour and the United States Pro Kart Series. US Pro Kart Series came out over this past week, said they're going to be changing their race format up. The first 2 weekends of this year, they had moved qualifying into Friday and 8 into the practice sessions for the day. Meant instead of getting 5 practice sessions, you went down to 3. And that way they could qualify everyone, and they would have enough time to run as many as 4 of the 7 classes, having a second pre-final to split the field in half for the pre-finals and have a last chance qualifier. After 2 events in, the third and the fourth classes that would just barely get over the cap of 40 or 44 entries really wasn't dictating the amount of track time everybody would lose by losing 2 practice sessions on Friday. The K100 Junior and the K100 Senior classes were healthily over the 40-plus number after the initial round 1, which the first round of a championship is almost always the biggest. Was still really big at GoPro. Is still probably going to be really big at Newcastle. Will be still big at Road America. I could see both of them with the Midwest and the Upper Midwest having big 100cc turnouts, especially in Wisconsin between Badger and Road America themselves, having 50-plus in each class or 60-plus in the case for KA Senior at GoPro. So those 2 classes are still going to have last chance qualifiers on Saturday and Sunday, but now the qualifying sessions will be moved on to their respective race days. And where we'll kind of get into it, and where Chris and Brandon especially, because they've been working on the team side and the tuning and the coaching side, can really talk about it. And Ryan obviously is heavily involved in the coaching for RPG. This makes the logistics of Friday a whole lot less stressful, a lot less fast-paced, and you can go back to kind of working on tuning on the go-kart. Because what would happen is we already had it, and we've kind of adjusted into this format over the last few seasons of the turnouts getting bigger, of using the last single practice session on Friday afternoon as the session that determines which qualifying group you go into. You can still qualify on the pole if you end up slow in that final practice, but it's typically tougher because more times than not, the track goes a little bit faster. You're obviously, in theory, around solely slower drivers from that session. So very rarely does the pole ever come out of the slow group. So guys were already putting on a new set of tires with the original format they ran for the first 2 rounds on practice number 3. They would dismount tires, put on a new set for Sunday qualifying. Then if you were in a class like X30 Senior or X30 Pro and like X30 Master, you'd run a new set then on Sunday. And I think they moved also to new sets for the KA classes as well. So then you'd already be one set dismounted, mounted from practice 2 to practice 3. You would do it again. The second time you're mounting tires is after that final practice, set your quality groups for Sunday qualifying. You dismount, mount again from Sunday qualifying to Saturday qualifying, which is the 5th and final session of the day. So now you're on your 3rd set of mounting, and then you would dismount those again, or at least if you had multiple sets of wheels, you take those wheels off because you don't have to run your Saturday or Sunday qualifying and race tires in the warm-up session. You would normally probably go back to the set of tires that only had 1 session on them, so they were still relatively fresh for the warm-ups, which was practice number 3. So you have 4 rounds of mounting and dismounting tires, and you cut out 2 practice sessions in a format that ultimately, like what they saw in the first 2 rounds, barely had more than just the 2K classes heavily over the cap. So they decided they're going to move back to that. That's going to make things logistically a lot better. Everybody as a whole is going to get 2 more sessions on Friday. It is going to make both race days still a little bit longer because they have roughly, it's 30 minutes when you factor in what's probably a 15-minute pre-final and a 10-minute LCQ and some gap time in between. So 30 minutes, say, when a class goes over the cap and they have to split into 2 heats and run an LCQ. So that's an hour boosted onto the day compared to their format from last year with 2 classes going to that cap. So when we go to Road America, when we go to the finale in Newcastle, more than likely you're going to have to book a flight probably Monday morning. You probably won't be able to fly out Sunday, but at least now you're getting more track time, which goes back on a lot of different conundrums of whether or not are we paying to race the best? Are we paying for a certain format? Or are we paying to try and get as many laps as possible from sun up to sundown? So I want to pass it off to everybody else. First about the Rio, and then about the format. And Chris, I know you're smiling because I know you got thoughts on both. And a little bit, I'm going to pass to you to just kind of touch on the Cali scene because I know you were talking to some of the Cali guys about it going in. Can you give us a little bit more insight, scoop of the Cali scene from what I said there?
Yeah, I mean, I just moved back to Atlanta, but, the last decade I've spent in the Cali scene and the West Coast karting scene. And, we have, or they have one of the best karting scenes in America. And I think because of COVID and because of everyone's work situation, school situations, I think it was okay for a while to have kind of this back-to-back and everyone's racing. And now that life's getting back kind of normalized, it's just a lot. But yeah, I mean, the Tri-C Karters, it's the clubbiest of club racing. And it's an amazing series. I think it's one of the most well-run and one of the best club series there is in America. But I mean, this past weekend, you had Jake Drew and Oliver Hodgson racing, the most club series you could imagine. And so, you have LAKC, you have Tri-C, you have SKUSA Pro Kart, you have the Rock stuff. I think right now, and you have every 3 out of the 4 weekends, pretty much every single month, you have some kind of club race in the LA, Southern California region. So it's busy, which is good for the teams, but for the clients that are trying to manage their budgets, it gets maybe a little bit difficult.
Right. And it spreads everything out too, of course, it ends up where, the whole lump sum of, where you get the best guys together, right, is kind of almost spread apart all those races. It's not like everyone picks and chooses and this is a marquee one and then they spread out on the rest. No one's kind of all on the same page for it, when that stuff happens across the board. But moving on to Vegas, how do you feel as a guy that's been, the longest stay in our sport of it coming back to the Rio? Are you stoked about it? Where do you feel in that thing?
Yeah, I'm pumped. I mean, listen, the hotel sucks, but you're not going there. You're not going there for the hotel. And I agree with what Tom said in the press release. I mean, it really is kind of. I've been to pretty much every location they've ever done at the SuperNats, and this is the SuperNats. I mean, it really is. It just kind of has that vibe. You love just going down straight from the room into the hotel. Going straight back from the night, maybe gambling a little bit if you're of age and not getting back to the hotel room till late at night, especially if you're in the afternoon sessions. It's just that it's home. And yeah, I'm pumped. I actually think I'm going to race this year. Definitely not against Ryan or Connor or Brent race. I am washed up. I will be in Masters. I have a kid. I'm in my late 30s. I'm going to get some crap from some of my old racing friends that are still in the sport, but it's time to move on. I can't compete with these young guns anymore. I tried at GoPro and K Senior that one time, and it's a little too hard.
It's tough, man. So yeah, here, Trev, put us on wide view here because I think everyone's going to have the same answer. I don't think anybody's opposed to it going back to the Rio. I mean, Brent and Connor, all they know is hotel rooms with their buddies and running down and around. That's no different than any other racetrack. We're not going to ask you guys.
Yeah,
Brent,
just like
Brandon, Ryan.
Walking into the hotel and like every other person you see at the Rio is like someone you know, and like when it's at like when it's somewhere else, you have to drive to the hotel and you can't go to dinner with all your friends alone, and so it's just it just isn't the same. So I'm glad it's going back to the Rio, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Ryan, Brandon, are we going to see you guys down gambling? Ryan, you were up last year at the nice one, the new one. What was the name?
That's why I'm a little upset because I like the Rio. It's better. I'm happy they're going there, but like I won a lot of money at the other place. It's a good craps table, so I got to go back there some nights. So I got to figure out my logistics a little more now. But yeah, I'm happy. Rio's
He found his table.
I did, dude. I did.
Dude, he was killing it, man. He made more on craps than he did on his paycheck.
I almost did. It was close.
Did Gary teach you how to play craps?
No, my dad did, but my dad's got some magic, man. He gets the table going.
Dude.
It's good.
Vic Norberg is the man at craps, man.
He is.
Ryan told me about it, and I went down to go see him, and I was 20 minutes too late from the 0-minute mark when Ryan said he was there to 20 minutes later when I showed up. The whole table is all full, and everyone's betting with pretty much whatever Vic does.
Yeah, exactly. You just follow Vic and just ride it out. If he goes on the field, you put 75 right down on it, and you just send it, and you'll win. You'll hit 12 or something. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, Brandon, you out of all of us here have the most team mindset when it comes to the USPKS format this year with how big the Mike Doty Racing tent's been and you being solely out of the seat and coaching. So can you kind of walk us through again to reiterate on that format change and what it's going to do on the back end and how you feel about it going to where it's going this, now with caps on everything but KA?
Yeah, I think it would be much better. Doing qualifying on Friday was definitely a little bit of a pain because, like you said, you had to mount and dismount multiple sets of tires. I didn't have to do any of that because I was doing all coaching, so that was nice. But yeah, pretty much everyone was always begging for another set of wheels, which, as everyone knows, everything's really hard to get right now, so it's hard to do that. But from like a coaching standpoint, I think it's going to help a lot because it's going to give more track time to the drivers, especially going to like Road America where we don't get to go all the time. It'll help because now we get four or five sessions on Thursday, then 5 sessions on Friday to get them used to the track. I personally like the least amount of practice, but I think it's better for overall for everyone to get more practice. But yeah, it's going to make for long days on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, it is what it is. I think it'll be a good change.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like it'd be in an ideal world. We talk about the where we're at with the sport, where you've got just as many probably guys that maybe shouldn't be there at the national scene as we've got guys that should be there. So we end up back and forth of whether or not we should have practice bans or not, or how many sessions we should have. And it goes back to on the format of like a single main event versus double main events. You talk to me, and this is going to probably annoy some of our viewers, maybe make some guys upset, but like, the only really reason we have the double main event is not for points, because you can balance that out with points on heats. It's just for everybody's feelings. When you have a bad Saturday and you can't recover, then you feel like your weekend's blown and you play recovery Sunday. But the real thing is like we go all the way out. I mean, these are big build-up weekends, especially now. I mean, Ryan shows up like 3 weeks early with RPG and they're testing. They've got like a whole separate big rig of engines. You know,
video
the whole
of the
separate big rig of
Minion?
engines, they pull it out, you know. See, that's how they find the turbo engine from the Minion on Instagram,
Yeah.
the meme going
Exactly.
because we don't get to see the big rig. They park it like down the road at a Walmart parking lot with all the spare motors and everything
Their
else.
spare dyno.
The spare dyno, the full shop. Do you guys have like the oversized load like warning sign on that thing? Do you bring like the whole house with the shop?
Yeah, but it comes up like 2 weeks before you guys even see it. So I mean, it's parked, it's way down there. I mean, you won't even ever know it's there.
I'll give Ryan credit real quick.
Yeah,
the talk at GoPro was not horsepower; it was RPG had more grip than anyone else. If you went up and down the paddock, the guys that were actually at the front, I mean, the real talk was how much grip RPG had in the cart, not really the horsepower.
Connor, shut up about tire prepping, man. Get out of here. You're not even showing to these races anymore. You're such a kid. Now the next month is going to be how Ryan preps his tires and what chemicals he's putting. You just started a whole storm. Yep. But no, it's but I mean these race weekends are major buildups, right? I mean everyone, you know, there's only a handful that everyone still really cares about, and we go and do test the week before, we test all week, we're there all week building go-karts. You know, teams are all loading out Mondays now. Very rarely are guys able, without packed the paddocks are, to get out Sunday night. You just tear it down and you drive the rig out Sunday. So we're doing this whole build-up, right, to, you know, through the end of the weekend. And the guys that normally win or perform on Saturday get forgotten about because everyone just kind of remembers how everything ends on Sunday. So it's like we're already kind of there. The only benefit is you personally, if you personally have a bad Saturday and then you get to have a good Sunday, then oh great, you know. But if I think it's I don't know. I'd like, obviously, from an entertainment and where we're at right now with me being solely a media guy, not racing, not coaching and any of these things, I'd love to see you guys racing instead of a $5,000 overall, like $5,000 to the checkered flag, like how we were at IME Grands and SuperNats. Like that's a better show. And then from everything else, like the build up to it, it matters a whole lot more. And so you can balance out the championship points, but there's still enough people that push on the series to want to do the 2-event format. Obviously, where they've got right now, that's the status quo. That's what SKUSA Pro Tour is as well. That's what all of our major events that we go to are used to. So I'm not knocking those guys. I think, you know, USPKS did the smart decision to shoot in the middle, and that's kind of where you have to be when you're, you know, maybe they are a little bit bigger entry-wise, but it's not like we have one solely dominant championship in the country right now. If we had one majorly above everybody else and they could kind of lead the ship and do the right things no matter how many people it might annoy, and they wouldn't have to worry about annoying people, those people jumping to another ship and that ship becoming bigger than them, you know, then you'd be like, come on, make the right decision. You're the only one that can make it. But I think they're shooting the middle on this one. And like Brandon said, at least now we're getting more seat time for the guys that are showing up, you know, and don't feel like they got to test the week before because they're getting 9 sessions before they go on track for, 10 if you count warm up, 10 sessions before they go on track for Saturday qualifying. So I don't know. It was a little soapbox moment for me there. I like getting to talk about it, but nonetheless, big news out of the week. I think they did the smart decision. I got to applaud them for it. And there was some other stuff. Obviously, we've talked about it a little bit last week too, with the racing and the racecraft. And I got on the phone with both with Mark, and he was telling me how him and Tom had been talking. So there's some other stuff those guys are cooking on beyond just race formats to try and continue to work on the state of the racing in the sport. And this isn't anything new. When it comes to the racecraft and stuff like that. I think it's progressed maybe more so as people have the pushback bumper, like fear has gone away and guys have figured out how to get them. But it's not a series issue when it comes to any of the rough driving. That was obviously what we talked about a lot last week. But there is some other stuff coming that I think that they're working on, both on, you know, trying to tidy up their officiating procedures and everything else more behind the scenes. So hopefully that stuff continues to progress and we continue to kind of, you know, again, just keep molding the sport where we want it to. But that's enough on the current news scene. When we come back from this first commercial break, we want to talk to what we got all our guests here for. And that is, since there's no major racing coming up, there's no fantasy picks to do, there's nothing from last weekend really to talk about besides Ryan going and beating up on some Masters guys in Shifter, is driver development.
I had donuts. You didn't show the donuts. The donuts were cool.
I will find the donuts for the end of the show. I will post the donuts. Okay, we'll post the donuts.
Proud of his donuts.
But when we come back, we've got 2 guys from my generation that arguably are the 2 biggest names of my generation in Ryan and Brandon here tonight. 2 biggest arguably of their generation in Connor and Brent, especially with the trajectory you both are on with KHI Management, running Trans Am, running Connor with Mazda MX-5 Cup. Brent, you've been on the dirt side for a while. Connor tried the dirt side a while back. So you guys are on a major track, and you already have a major track record when it comes to karting nationally and internationally. And the same for Brandon and Ryan as well. And so obviously Chris, a heck of a driver in his day as well, but obviously now in a driver coaching position.
Man,
we wanted to talk about.
I thought you were going to say now washed up, but
no,
now
I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to do that. Well, I could say that because he got whooped in the rental car race last year at Grand, so he's got redemption to do. See, that's what I'm going to do this year. I'm going to see if Eric will let me get in the Grand's rental kart race, and I will put all the drivers on the broadcast booth, and I'll wear the suit.
Maybe I'm racing the Grands.
Ooh, I get to be.
Didn't John Burke do the rental kart race?
Shut up, Brandon. No, you don't. You're going to run X30. Stop saying you're not. Yeah, a bunch of guys that shouldn't have ran that race. Burke ran it, Brendan Baker ran it, Jake French ran it. All those guys are like still active.
Hey, Artie still won. Artie still won.
Yeah, Artie did.
Hey, don't sleep on Artie. Artie's
a beast.
A wheelman.
Artie's a beast too, man. Artie's a beast. Well, look, in all seriousness, we want to talk to all these guys because we've got really 3 different eras separated by only about 5 years, but truly different eras because how quickly stuff passes in racing. Of path to getting to the top. And so tonight, it's not about marketing. It's not about dollars. I mean, we're going to there's other shows to talk about how to get that stuff done. But I think for every parent that comes into this sport and their kid wants to aspire to become better, and if everything else falls into line where you can, that's less of an issue, there's still the issue of how you manage your kid, where you put your time, where you put your budget, where you invest, where you race, where you test, etc. And that's really what we're going to talk about when we come back from commercial break with all these guys who have all done it successfully in a number of different ways. I want to go through their past and obviously what they've learned, what they think is the best way to go from your first day at the racetrack in whatever class you get into, and then upwards from there. So stick with us, guys. Casey Happy. I'll be right back. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com.
At New Gen Motorsport, we're committed to using our 10-plus years of experience and knowledge to help grow the sport of karting from the bottom up. Our goal is to make karting more accessible to the average person, lessening the financial burden of getting started, and making the learning curve as small as possible. Our passion is training and developing drivers, mechanics, and engineers to not only be the best they can be in karting, but also for careers in the much larger world of professional motorsports. A strong foundation makes building bigger easier. Let us be that foundation for your karting and motorsports career. Be part of the new generation of motorsport. Contact us today to schedule your test day, arrive and drive race event, or to inquire about how we can help get you started in your own new gen racing kart.
Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including IAMI and ROC divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amar Sonata at srp-engines.com. Casey Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. So welcome back, everybody, here now. Trevor, go ahead and put us back on the master view, I guess, where we can see everybody, because every week this guy breaks in and he's found a way in again. Tony, bring in Tony, dude. Tony, where are you? You're at a restaurant right now, right?
What's Pinocchio?
This is before, dude. I'm just chilling.
Don't explain what Pinocchio is, Tony.
Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a vegetable.
Oh,
It is.
Tony.
You know
All
it.
right, let me pull up my translator.
Try it.
Trevor, let's go a little bigger here. So let's talk about it, guys. Let's go through. So I think again, the big thing is trying to become a well-rounded driver growing up. So let's go ahead and we'll pass it over to you, Brent, and give you some talking time here. Because I think, when I was talking to you on the phone about coming on for this show, I wanted you to kind of go over a lot of the stuff that's not seen. Everybody's seen how successful you and Connor were in cadet very, very early on. You won international championships, national championships in the cadet stuff. Very quickly moved through junior at the point where your stepdad, Matt, was begging every series like 3 years early to move you up early, expecting the no so that way he could get a yes the year after when you were only 1 year out. But, you guys were at the track a lot when you were a lot younger and in a lot of different formats, right? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so we'd go to the track like 3 to 4 days a week just for hours and hours and hours, and that progressed into some coaching. We had actually Austin Garrison and Ashley O'Hara coached me a lot through the ranks for years, and I feel like that was just a huge stepping stone.
Right. And Connor, you too, in your case, right, just where Brent had Ashley and he had Austin and then later on had Nick Tucker, Connor, you had Gary Willis, as your longtime coach for a long time when you were through cadet. How much testing did you guys do when he'd be up with you at GoPro? Besides the big races you'd go to.
Yeah, we wouldn't test that much. We just try and race a lot. Really just try and, even if it's a WK race or anything, just seat time in general. As long as there's some decent drivers there that you can compete against, it's worth going. And that's kind of just where it started, just doing a bunch of races and trying to be in the seat as much as possible is what's really important. You can't really beat seat time. You're not gonna progress any quicker than it's literally impossible to beat that curve, if you want to say so. You just got to be in the seat, and it does take budget, but it comes with a reward if you do put in the time.
Right. And, that's a given, and that's not what we want to go through here. Let's take the budget out and let's say if you had that ultimate budget outside of the equipment, right, which is what everybody thinks to, is the seat time, I think for me is so important because, in the bit that I would, tried and did run some national racing and some, in the 1 or 2 races a year I would do, I spent all day Friday and all day Thursday kind of following guys and trying to go off GoPro because the natural seat of the pants feel for me, I don't feel like was ever developed. And I've told a lot of parents very early on, and Chris and Tony, you guys especially, and Brandon as well now, go through that. I think that's probably one of the most important things when you're looking at a younger driver or just a newer driver in terms of development is to the point that almost like driving's like natural, right? Or even like subconscious, you shouldn't be having to focus on hitting an apex or hitting your marks when you get into a race. That should already be second nature, and you should be just focusing on how to strategically position yourself to win the race. Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah, I honestly, and Tony, we've talked about this at dinner a bunch. I think one of the problems we see today is kids rely a little bit too much on data and video,
Equipment.
Looking at data is not going to show you how to hit your apex. And in some regards, video is great, but we rely on it too much. I think a lot of kids need to kind of get back to the old school way of driving and get more of that seat of the pants feel and develop that first, and then use data and video as a tool to improve that. But if you can't feel what's underneath you, I didn't drive for a whole year, got back in a go-kart, and I could hit every apex on track. Overdriving, underdriving, it didn't matter because it's not that hard. You look where you want to go, you turn your hands and you go where you want to go. But we overcomplicate sometimes for the younger kids, I think.
Yeah. Tony, what do you think here when it comes to developing like the first skill, or when you got a newer family getting in? What do you tell them, right? And what are the stuff that they should focus on, when they want to develop?
What you tell them and what really goes on is two sides of the coin. But driving the go-kart, like Chris said, there's not. Just being there, being in the go-kart as much as you can. Really just putting in the effort just to be there is really what is key, man. You got to put in, look, all these kids that are on here, they've put in more time than most people have, like they sacrifice just life in general. You know what I mean? Like just going, missing normal kid days or that's what it takes. It takes all of it, man. If you're going to do it, you have to do it full force, and it's a commitment that's there. And if you're willing to do that, the squiggly lines on the data and the video doesn't do shit. It's the amount of effort that you put in just to be at the track all the time. Even Ryan, dude, I remember Ryan when he was fucking 8 years old, and look, no lie, and you can agree with Ryan. I mean, you were there all the time, every week, all the time. It was just the way it goes. The more you're in that cart turning that steering wheel, the better you're going to be in the long run.
And if you look at, OGP, the program they built, how many laps did you have to do a year there? Like what?
Dude, how many laps a month?
Yeah,
10,000.
10,000 a month. So
yeah,
just and it proved. I mean, what races did they not win? So
yeah,
it's the way it goes.
Yeah, George came in and made the sport what it was and supported those kids. But the reason they were good is they would do 10,000 laps a month, and
because it starts at the base. You have to start and put the time in. If you don't put the time in, then nothing means anything in the end.
You can't get results. Yeah.
No.
Well, Xander, like you were saying, I mean, we talk about taking the budget out of it. I always, when I talk to parents that are new in the sport, and I normally don't work with too many new families or kids in the sport, but I always like to equate it to any other sport that you play: basketball, baseball, football. The kids that progress the most in those sports have the ability to practice every day for hours. And it's, you can go shoot a basketball at your basketball hoop as much as you want for hours on end, and there's really no budget associated with it. But the kids that put the time in usually end up doing better. Yes, there's naturally gifted drivers. And I think, Brent and Connor, of all of us on the show, are probably two of the most gifted drivers. Yes, they put the work in, but I think they have that gift that maybe not all of us have, and we've had to work a little bit harder than maybe they have. But it's you can't take away the seat time, and it's no different. If you're not willing to put in that work and that seat time, you're never gonna get ahead. And I like to just equate it to any other sport that you play. Racing's no different.
Right. I think something else that we forget though is that I agree that a lot of the data in the video for most guys doesn't help a lot, but we live in a generation where, for me, for example, I grew up with the Micron 4, which it's pretty, I still use it now, but I didn't have the e-box, I didn't have the speed sensor, so I couldn't even do data if I wanted to do data at the racetrack. Now everybody's got a Micron 5, and you can pull up data, you get everything you ever need. It's super easy, super simple. When I started, hardly anybody ran a GoPro. You couldn't find one video of a racetrack anywhere in the nation that you wanted to go to. And now every kid has 2 or 3 GoPros. And so it's like a double-edged sword because you have access to so much more. But also it's not doing a whole lot, because what I tell a lot of the kids that I work with is I'm telling you to brake later for this corner or whatever, but that's for the previous session. So what's going on in the next session, I have no idea. I have no idea what the track's going to be like next session. But for the previous session, you should have braked later. Yeah. But for the next one, you have to feel it out. So it's one of those things, because I do coaching all the time, and you talk to the dads or whatever, and they're like, "Well, are you going to data or video?" And it's yeah, we will. But I think it's hard because you sometimes you're doing, it's like Chris, you're doing more harm than good, because you're telling the kid, brake later, and then the track gets hot, it gets 10 degrees warmer, and now they're over driving every corner, and you've got to it just wasted a whole session. Yeah. And so it's I think more difficult than before, because for me, I never had any of that stuff. So whenever I would go out and drive, I'd miss an apex. I didn't know why I did. I'd come in and Gary'd be like, "Well, you've got 300 push-ups today to do, so you better get it done before you go out again." Okay. So I'm sweating. And then I go out again, and the track changes, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I love that. You're not going. I'm not pushing your go-kart up to the grid if you don't finish your push-ups.
No, he wouldn't. He'd literally loosen the tires and be like, "Well, I'm not tightening them, so you better." No. But then I do it, and I think it is like that. You got to learn how to be. You got to learn the feel, man. The feel is the biggest thing of anything.
And I definitely I definitely like how Gary approached it. In the moment, I didn't. I mean, like, you got to be harsh. Like, you can't be like, oh yeah, like I really. Even though it's like it's hard to say, but the parents that are going to tell their kid they're always doing good, that's not how it works. I mean, you know, Matt, Brent's dad, or and even my dad, Gary. I mean, they beat.
Oh yeah,
on us.
both
They
of you
beat
guys
on
both
us.
had a few somber
Yeah.
scale
I
lines.
mean,
I
you can't
remember
be
seeing.
nice. You can't be
No.
nice when stuff goes wrong. You gotta let them know.
But there's a balance to
you,
that.
Yeah, there is. You can't.
You know,
obviously,
like you can't.
but-
I don't think you can teach a kid to care. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that there's that right balance, right? Like,
Yeah.
just as much as you guys both were hit hard by the people coaching you, and
Yeah.
obviously because they cared, you know, and that's tough to balance. But at the same point, I don't want to make sure that we go out of the show and every parent's like,
Yeah.
all right, I got to be relentless on my
Yeah.
child, or I have
Yeah.
a coach that needs to make my kid cry, because
Yeah.
the kid needs to want it on their own. You know, both of
Yeah.
you guys, I mean, we go back to the video, right? I mean, Brent, there's, you know, your dad even was more active on, Matt was even more active on Facebook than Connor's dad was. But I can remember countless times of him showing you with an iPad at 7, 8 years old, watching every single onboard video, which was all I did, which was the same thing. I'd watch it because I couldn't be there, you know, but that you do that too. So like Ryan said, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I think every kid does that naturally that cares. So you have to have that. You have to be honest. You have to be hard about it. You're right. And I'll let you finish on that, Connor, too. But I want to make sure that we clarify, too, like, if your kid doesn't care, you can't make them care. You can do things to maybe kind of push them, right? Like, there's this funny story about a friend of mine and my old boss of mine who had his son race, and he was near my age. And there was a club series they were running. They were running the club series. They would test, you know, a couple weekends a month. They'd run the club series. And his kid would just, in the middle of the race, just, like, point people by. And so he finally got tired of being like, why are we spending all this money to qualify up front? And you see someone behind you and you just point them by and let them go in the middle of the final. So he parked him for 3 races. And then after parking him for a few months, then the kid's like, oh, I really want to do this. And then the dad's like, okay, if you want to do this, we're going to do this. And I'm going to go all in, but you need to go all in too. And that clicked. And that you got to kind of find that balance as a parent with your kid. You need to be obviously understanding who your kid is, where they're at, where they're not. And that kind of factors in too. You can't force them to do anything they aren't going to want to do. You can put them in the right situation. And like Connor and Brent alluded to, and Ryan with 300 push-ups, if you really want it, you've got to work really, really hard for it, because there's someone else down the street that will work really, really, really hard. But at the same time, you know, you can't kill them. You know, you gotta wait for them to care.
But you got to be able to to let them know when they do something wrong. Like I'll be coaching a kid in the trailer, for instance, and I'm trying to tell them what they're doing wrong, and say a parent's sitting there like, oh no, like, no, it's not like that. It's just, you can't get better if you're not honest with yourself. So,
but I think that one of the things that we're talking about is, like, you know, seat time is the best, obviously. But like, you read the comments and everybody's asking, you know, how do you teach the feel like that? How do you learn the feel? I think that, at least for me, obviously, like having OGP there was the biggest thing. But racing or being on track, whether it's racing or whatever, with people who are better than you, having a coach who's on track with you and like forces you to slow down extra for a corner, or pushes you and hits you every time you brake too early for a corner, and is constantly around you, and you're constantly around people, I think is where I learned the feel. Like I did thousands of laps with Nick Neri, Oliver Askew, Kyle Kirkwood, Alex Speed, Gary Carlton, and I just get like my ass handed to me like every weekend. Every time I go to practice, I just get obliterated. And it was like, I mean, and that's when you learn the feel, because like you go into the corner and you're in a train with like the nation's best drivers, and you get hit going to the corner. You're like, okay, I got to go faster. And you start, you just surround yourself with better drivers or a coach where you're just constantly on the racetrack. And it doesn't even have to be at a race. That's where you pick up like the feel. That's where you understand, like, this is too much. This isn't enough.
But it's also, you have to consider the fact that if you coach the situational aspect of what a race, you know, what goes on a race weekend, situational things always happen. And during racing, whether it's at a start or during, you know, whatever, the first 5 laps, the first whatever, everything is always situational. So if you teach how to understand how to be situational, you know, or how to pick the right scenarios or what to do when when shit hits the fan, that's also what counts. And what you're saying is exactly that. You have to teach situational, things. I mean, things just happen. You can never plan out anything. The moment you plan out something, it will always 100% go wrong.
Right. Yeah, I think too. Yeah. It's all encompassing, but also, especially with the guys that are kind of just getting going, people go and drive and they do laps, and they go to the track. That's not, seat time is a lot, but kind of what Ryan was talking about. I mean, you can go drive a million laps. If you don't have a plan and you're not like actually going to the track with a purpose, you're not really going to achieve that much. I mean, I just spent 2 days out in California with a driver that I work with, and we took the Micron off and literally just spent a full day drifting the cart, finding the limit of the tire, understanding how to lock up the brakes too much, not enough, almost like drills in a way. And it's like, you think about it as like, well, that's stupid. I'm not chasing a lap time. But in the beginning, you need to understand. That's how you get that feel, is you understand where the limit of the cart. You just don't chase the lap time all day, because if the track goes off and you think you should be going faster and you put new tires on and you don't go faster, you're gonna get down on yourself, and then you're going downhill from there.
Yeah, I really agree with that.
Brandon, you had kind of a little different path than some of these guys with the way you were up, right? I mean, I don't know how much testing and regional racing you were doing up in the Northeast where you came up, but obviously you ran Man Cup for a while and then into USPKS, and you were good in that stuff kind of off the bat, but the club scene was better there too, right? So, I remember talking to your dad and I was like, man, I wish I had some more practice days. He's like, yeah, Brandon and I never really tested. So where do you think, like, kind of for you, like, got that natural feel developed? Do you think it was doing that regional stuff? Was it strong there? Because when you broke onto the national scene, you were pretty good all the way back in cadet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was we just raced whenever we possibly could. We didn't really do a lot of testing, which I think is kind of some of the problems with some of the kids nowadays, is they're like crazy fast and they can qualify up front, but then they get in a racing situation and they have no idea what to do. So I think like just racing as much as you possibly can is the best route to go. That's kind of what I did. We didn't really go do practice days. We did the Friday before the races because that's all that was allowed back when I grew up. We practice that day and then we just go race. And I think also what really helped me was the club I grew up at Englishtown in New Jersey. We did a pill pick for the heat races. So one race you would start second, and then the next race you would start second to last. So you were forced to learn how to pass people. You weren't just going out and qualifying and then just running out front all by yourself. I know a lot of club series don't do that nowadays, but the easy way to fix that is just don't really worry about your finishes in the club races. Just start from last and work on your passing and racecraft. So then when you go to the national scene, you know what to do when you get around other go-karts. Because I see it all the time. A lot of our kids, they just go and just test all by themselves, and they get around other go-karts and they freak out and they don't really know what to do. So I think that's one way to fix it, is just race on the local level, race on the regional level, and just get around other people. Kind of like Ryan was saying, even if you just get out there with a coach or multiple people on track, just get out there with other people and be around people. And even like get free coaching at the track on the national days. Go out behind all the fast people and just learn from them every session. Yeah, it's free coaching. Why not just do that? I mean, I used to do it all the time when I needed help. Go out behind the fast people. You're gonna learn something.
Same. Yeah, when me and Brent were kids and we used to like go out there to GoPro together, and we would go out and we wouldn't know each other would be there, and the two of us were just doing laps, and when we'd go out together and then we'd just start racing, and we'd be racing for 10, 15, 20 laps and just trying to like having like 2-lap races, and then and it was just kind of the way we learned how to race. And I remember Matt, I mean, I could be wrong, but Matt used to put you at the back of like pre-finals and stuff, just to learn how to race, and it works. And the only way to get better at it is repetition. So
yeah, we started in the back and stuff like that, and I really felt like also just more of the fact that we haven't focused on is like, I think coaching is more than I think people really understand, like having somebody on the racetrack actually with you. Like for Keelan, for an example, like when we go out there and drive together, we block each other, and then they figure out the moves, and you can see obviously his racecraft is way advanced for for who he's around. So I just think coaching and racing your coach just puts you so far ahead of the game.
Yeah. So
You gotta put
that's I
yourself
think a
around the
good
right
way to
people.
put a pin on the seat time for the night here is, right? Like the seat time doesn't just go about just going, obviously at the beginning, going out and just driving, right? And then when you start hitting a limit, I think, of how fast you're going, then at that point you start looking for coaching, and then you can start entering some club races once you get to a safe point. And then from there, seat time is a mix of like what Brandon said, what Ryan said, going out with other people, going and battling and learning the racecraft and passing and blocking just as much as you're learning the last little bit and the last half second, normally half second to 7/10 when the track's different, when you're making chassis adjustments. So that initial testing is obviously to get you in the ballpark. And then from there, you've got to continuously put yourself in different environments. And that's the one part I wanted to kind of touch on here with you, especially Brent, because you more than anybody else here had a very diverse portfolio starting at a very young age of running in different environments. Obviously, outside of karting, you'd run dirt stuff all the time. But you and Connor both ran so many different tire compounds, so many different engines. I mean, you guys ran everything there was. How important, Brent, you first, do you think it is to put yourself out of your comfort zone? Not just, you could say different track, different country, different tire, different engine format. How important is that to kind of keep developing the field?
Yeah, so I think it's huge. So it obviously gives you a different feel. Like I also had a lot of dirt experience, honestly, just as much as I did asphalt. So it pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And then eventually if you're going to be great, you're going to have to drive a lot of different cars. And if you can start that at a young age, you're learning how to go from dirt to asphalt, like week to week, and even from day to day. It's huge. Like if you have to go drive, if you want to do IndyCar and NASCAR and you have to go back to back and you don't know how to adjust your body to it, you're going to look like a fool. So if you can start super young and figure out how to do that, I just think it's a huge game changer.
And Connor, when you came back from Europe, man, I mean, you were already on top of the world when it came to the mini stuff. But when you came back from running over there and getting to run a little bit in mini, but especially I felt like do you feel like it helped running the Academy series and running on those higher grip tracks and faster stuff when you got into senior? Because you'd run a handful of junior and you were quick. And then it seemed like even then you were kind of at another spike almost when you came back to the U.S. from going to another environment, running something else harder. We've talked about this a little bit too on the show.
Yeah. No, Kevin Harvick actually tells us this all the time. You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's something that Europe kind of taught me when I went over there. I remember in a heat race one time, I looked back and there was nobody behind me. I was in last. And like coming from America where I was like running at the front and like that makes you want to be better. For me at least, it pushes me to be better and just having that sensation of not knowing really what you're doing. And I mean, even when I raced at the dirt track Wednesday, I was so lost. Like in the feature, I just had no idea where to go. So, and then that's how you learn. You just got to put yourself in different situations and try and, I guess find a solution and try and find your way and learn how to be comfortable doing different things. And I think going to Europe and driving those different tracks, driving the different tires, the different motors, just being able to adapt to different situations is really important as well. You can't just go out to GoPro and drive a KA and on MG Reds every day and expect to get better and better. It's just, you got to try different stuff and put yourself in different situations.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go a little more in specific on that. And especially kind of, I want to, get everybody's opinion of when to kind of put yourself in a different situation and when you start getting comfortable and where you can kind of metric and get a metric on that and see it. When we come back from this last commercial break, we're going to take, and we'll also answer any other questions that you guys have and any other comments you'd like to send in. So we'll take another commercial break off Happy Hour. Stay tuned in, send in your comments and questions, and we'll kind of go a little bit further when it comes beyond the initial seat time of learning some racecraft, learning passing, and getting that natural feel. What's next in terms of getting yourself from a club racer to a national, international level? Stick with us, guys.
KC Happy Hour is presented by Precision Performance Karting. PPK is the exclusive South Florida distributor for the American-made Coyote Zenith kart racing chassis. PPK is offering trackside support at all the Cup Kart South Division events, the CKNA majors, including the Spring Nats and the Grand Nats, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, and a number of club events in the Southeast. New here for 2022 and in partnership with Brandon Jarsocrak Racing, PPK is also offering full arrive and drive opportunities in the junior, senior, Briggs 206 classes at the popular Stars Championship Series and the GoPro Motorplex Karting Challenge events. The same professionally prepared kart and motor package has propelled
Why does this shit
Brandon to
keep pausing?
victories at Winter Nationals and the Monticello Divisional in 2022 are available to you. In addition to the Coyote line of racing chassis, Precision Performance Karting is also a distributor for
Why keep
Odenfeld
muting my
Racing
mic?
products, Hilliard clutches, Vega tires, and Greyhound racing seats. Check out Precision Performance Karting on Facebook and Instagram or email them at ppkartingfl@gmail.com.
I'm Billy Vincent, owner of MPG Motorsports. What we do at MPG is we try to keep it a nice, fun family atmosphere, try to combine sort of the bigger things and of the bigger teams and the professionalism down with sort of some of the fun, sort of family-oriented atmosphere. We try to not only develop drivers, but also the parents and the families for just in knowledge in general in motorsports. It all starts in karting. What we try to do is try to help the drivers, the moms, the dads understand the sport of motorsports in general, not just karting, but what it takes to get all the way up through. Whether you end up wanting to be a driver or a mechanic or an engineer, you know, we can help you with that, and that's what we're here for. If you're interested in joining us at MPG, our home base is at Whiteland Raceway Park in Indianapolis, and you can contact us at info@willpowerkart.com. And one of our great people will reach out to you, and we'll try to put the best program together.
Looking to join one of the fastest growing kart clubs in the United States? Check out the Mississippi Karters Association. Located at the legendary Spring Ridge Raceway in Jackson, Mississippi, the MKA and Drive Your Line Kart Shop have already kicked off their 2022 year with a massive increase in drivers and some awesome racing. Even if you don't have a kart yet, you can get involved by checking out the Drive Your Line Kart Shop, which is an official dealer of Comp Kart, Tillotson, and Margate chassis, as well as Briggs & Stratton, Tillotson, Yamaha, and IME engines. If you're a new, returning, or current racer, the MKA and Drive Your Line Kart Shop can help you get in the seat and on the track in the central Mississippi region. Check them out online on Facebook or at misskarting.com and driveyourline.com.
Welcome back, everybody. And as we get everyone back on in here, I think there's probably nobody better to talk about maybe waiting until the right moment to move up than Ryan down below, because Ryan, you know, you talked about how you had such a competitive scene locally that you really didn't need to try and go to the national scene because the national guys were all nearby you. And until you started really performing and taking it serious, right, your dad kind of kept you there and was like, I'm not going to go and spend a bunch of money until you're going to really, you know, get the results and get better, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I was very, very fortunate looking back at my local, my local races were national, very high national level races. I mean, I had Juan Correa. You could go down the list of just the absolute talent that was coming to my local races. There had 34 guys in it at a local Ocala. I mean, AJ Myers, Tony's kid, Dominic was there. He was good at the time. Everybody was good. And so for us, I mean, we would finish a local race in 7th, and then everybody's like, oh, are you going to go to Vortex Nationals or whatever? And my dad was like, why? We can't beat them at our local track. What makes you think we can go to, we're South Bend, Indiana and beat them? There's no purpose for us to go out there because we're just going to do the same thing. And it wasn't until I started winning an FKCS race, which at the time was relatively difficult. I mean, I had to beat OGP, I had to actually try and do well to win a local state race, that my dad was really like, okay, let's start considering trying something outside of the state. And so, it took a lot. I mean, I stayed in Florida for about 7 years before I actually traveled anywhere. And then my first race was the Mooresville race for the Rotex Nationals on the AM kart, which I had never driven before. And that was the first time I'd ever left the state of Florida. So yeah, it was a lot of just laps and stuff, before I was even ready to go race anything nationally.
And Brandon, you and your dad, you guys kind of made the decision to go to Daytona in cadet off of not necessarily just your guys' intuition, but Mike Doty, who's been your longtime coach and mentor, right?
Yeah, I kind of had the same path as Ryan. I raced for probably 4 or 5 years before I went to my first national race, but we had a really good regional and local scene around us as well. And basically we just said, if you can finish in the top 3 at our local scene, you can probably go to the national stuff and finish on the podium. And that's kind of what happened. At Englishtown, we had really good people there. We had, back in my day, it was Trent Hinman, Sean Sharkey, the Landsbergs, Landauers, which were all really good people back in that time. And they all raced at the local scene there every weekend. And we would get 30, 40 go-karts in a Yamaha Sportsman or Yamaha Junior race. And it was just like that. And then one day Mike just said to us, he's like, we think you can go to Daytona and do really well. And we went our first year, qualified third in my first national, and then finished on the podium, which was back then was really hard because we had 65, 70 go-karts in the Yamaha Sportsman class at that time. But yeah, like I said, we toned our skills at the local and regional races, and then we went to nationals, which I think a lot of people kind of make that mistake is they jump into the nationals too quick nowadays, and then they kind of get discouraged, and then that's why you see people go out of karting so quick now, where I think they need to do more of the local races and then build up to the national stuff.
Chris, what about you working with kind of a family's almost top to bottom? I mean, I know you work more with guys when they get to that last little bit where you need, but I mean, you're around the racetrack. So do you have any kind of advice for families when they should kind of put themselves out their comfort zone, when they should go up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent of moving up earlier than later. So always trying to move up to that next age group earlier than later. So, I think both Brent and Connor did that. And, my main focus more is kind of working with kids as they move into that first year of car racing and preparing them properly for that. But I think moving up earlier than later so you can get a year of senior racing, at least, if not two, in before you're 16 years old. So you've already done a year of senior racing when you're 14, 15 years old, and you can move up. It is important in my books. Practicing faster than you race, I think, is a big thing. If you follow Instagram, I think Connor and Brent both work with Keelan Harvick quite a bit, and you see he's always practicing in a KA junior. So whenever you can practice faster, that's a big benefit too. And in every sport that there is some kind of speed related, baseball players normally when they're batting, they are getting balls fed to them faster than 100-mile-an-hour fastball. They're usually getting 105 constantly, getting yourself out of that comfort zone, which we talk about. But I think Sebastian Weldon was like, let's talk a little bit about car racing. As you moving in, we talk a lot about all this stuff we want to do in karting. One thing to remember for the parents, at least, and I see this a lot, and I know Brandon probably and Tony and now Ryan sees this a lot too. Parents think it's you die on the sword of how well you do in go-karts. And it's great, but in reality, go-karting is high school level sports. It's not professional sports. This is a place for you to learn your craft, to find a passion for racing. Goes back to what some of the guys talked about. You can't force someone to want to do better. They're going to want to do better if they have a passion for the sport and want to see that end goal. But you can go down the list of professional race car drivers that were nobodies in go-karts. Even Joseph Newgarden. I mean, he won a couple Newcastle races, but other than that, I mean, he didn't win anything nationally, but he is a absolute stud in a race car. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is just focus on learning and getting better in a go-kart. How you do in a race car and moving on past that has very little to do with what you win in a go-kart race.
Talking about going a little bit faster, Brent, I remember you had like an 80cc shifter strapped onto your freaking cadet cart at like 8 years old, dude. Talk to us about that. How did that come about? Did Matt just like, all right, you won your first micro Swift race, we're going to put a shifter engine somehow on this Energy Cadet?
Yeah, I don't really know how that idea worked. It was just an idea, and I started running it, and I feel like even that, for example, just like, as Chris was saying, I mean, the faster you can go before you go and run something slower to just slow your mind down, you can make so many more decisions so much faster.
And did you think, like, did you guys, when you would do that, did you have to spend a day going from having, well, you didn't have front brakes put on that cadet car, did you? You still had rear brake only stuff with the shifter?
Yep, yeah, only cadet brakes.
So like, was it at all where you had to kind of spend a day where you'd go back to the class you were going to race to kind of get your mind back to those points again? Or was going back and forth so much you would make it hard on yourself purposefully, and not like you'd go shifter to, let's say, Wednesday, and then you'd go leave and, Friday show up at the racetrack for the race you're going to run and go back in your thing? Or did you ever have to put days in to get back to what you were supposed to race, again?
No, I never really struggled with having to go back and readapt. We did it so much that we'd say for an example, we'd run on Tuesday with the shifter cart, and then we'd run Wednesday Millbridge, and then we'd go race the weekend at the GoPro Club. So we just did that so much that it just really didn't have to take time to get back used to it.
And Brandon, that's a common thing you see now too, and I see it also, right? Like guys will move up move up locally or move up regionally one class higher than what they'll run at the national scene to kind of prep for the next year national race. You be a proponent of that stuff too?
Yeah, for sure. I think people moving up and just racing against the better people. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate for us older guys that are in the senior class racing against the young kids, but it teaches them a lot. Because I mean, you're racing against like me and Ryan, who have 10, 15 years of experience. You're not going to learn anything more than that. And like I always said, it's basically a free coaching session, just racing against us.
Right. And, again, we're not like the idea too is, it's whether you want to get good at this sport, right? Cars aren't going to be in the cards for a lot of people. That's just the fact of the matter is the budget's going to limit them. But if you want to get good at it, I think the sport and in any sport in general, but in racing, it's taking yourself out of your comfort zone as often as possible, moving up, not just classes early, but I think almost moving up to the next scene, maybe a little bit prematurely too, right? You don't need to go and win 12 club races in a row and dominate at your club and take 5 years to get to that. You could start running the regional stuff when you get to the top 5. When you get to the top 3, you can move up to that next level series and get the way to a different track, right? I almost think that the path should be, you start running good at your club track, feel like you master your club track, go to a neighboring club track, maybe not even go to a regional series yet. Maybe you can do the regional when it comes to your town, but go to some different clubs around to go to at least a different track environment, and then do the regional and then do the national.
That's also very important is don't stay at the same track. Try and go to as many different tracks. Like we've been talking about, expose yourself to different situations. Go to different tracks because the quicker you can adapt to newer tracks, it helps when you go to the national races. You don't have to necessarily then go do that whole week prior testing. If you can get used to the track on the Thursday and then use Friday to fine tune, that's all the better. And especially when we go to all these temporary tracks we go to now, like Vegas and the winter tour and stuff, the quicker you can adapt to the track, the better off you're going.
And it's to ask you, I think Ryan, maybe you might be the only one, maybe you too, Chris, right? Like, because, in the case of Brent and Connor, you guys have had coaches involved in your guys' career almost from, the beginning, really, really early on. Brandon, you were linked with Mike as soon as you kind of got to the national scene. But Ryan, in your case, for a while, like you said, it was you and your dad at the club race and stuff, and you'd get help. But there's a degree that I think every parent needs to also understand that you don't know what you don't know. You might think you know something. You might think you've got the sport down. And the moment you think you've got motorsports down, you really don't, and you hit points where you figure it out. And I think a lot of people will get caught up in the last 10th or two thinking it's chasing one thing or another, where going to find someone of expertise, and that expertise doesn't always have to be a driver coach. 9 times out of 10, I would say it is, but it could also be like a chassis tuner or someone with a chassis setup. So when you kind of hit a wall, there's a point too when repeating yourself of hitting the same result, not like when you plateau in any way, right? Going to get that outside help. And I don't know, Ryan, if you've had any experiences like that. I know I did, because again, for me and my dad, we did privateer stuff up until like the 3rd or 4th national race I did in junior. And then when we did that and got coached a whole lot more on what to do with the kart and what to do with my driving as the track progressed, I just went out there and drove. And then obviously I ran a whole lot better, So, I mean, I don't know if you had any experiences similar.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff. Like in my entire career, I've done one coaching, like the coaching that I give, one of those with Gary Carlton for a day at Ocala. And that was the only coaching I've ever on track coaching. The rest was from, Gary Willis and just a bunch of other random people throughout the years. But I mean, to this day, I'm still learning. I still don't know a lot, and I'm still learning a lot. Even when I went with Burrell, I'm learning a lot about how the chassis actually works. When I went from a Tony kart, it's relatively easy to tune on. I spent my majority of my career on that, and I did a little bit here and there on other stuff, but I was kind of relying on other people to help me out. I didn't really know how to tune a kart at all. I just kind of I knew one kart really well, and that was it. And so when I went to the Burrell, nobody was there helping me to figure it out. I was supposed to know that already at that point in my career. So yeah, it's a lot of you don't know till you don't know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and you need to ask people and figure it out. And luckily, there's a lot of I learned a lot from Kyle Kirkwood. Like he helped me a lot, and he didn't have to. A lot of it sometimes with a backhanded compliment or something to you, and I would pick it up and be like, "Oh, he's actually saying I need to do this."
Brandon did the same to me. Brandon did the exact same to me, dude.
Well, there was one time where Kyle punted me, and he was like, "Hey, man, next time, if you don't want to get punted, just kind of drag the brake into the corner, and then I can't get you off that bad." And I'm like, "All right." I was like, "That actually helps. Helps a lot, actually." So then I kind of figured, you got to ask a lot around the racetrack to figure a lot of the stuff out because, if you don't know, at least for me, I never came from a racing family. I was the first person to do racing in my entire family, and my dad doesn't know a lot about it, and nobody knows. So everything I was doing is if I asked, I'd figure something out. If I didn't, I'd just wait till I learned it on the racetrack.
Yeah, there's no dumb questions. I mean, you just know. If you don't know something, ask. If there's people that are willing to help you, they're there to make you better. So utilize them the proper way.
I think too, you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to talk. On the kind of team side and helping run teams now, you'd be surprised at how many of the teams talk. Maybe not RPG, but I'm just but no, but
I hear you.
But when you're winning, when you're dominating, you don't want to give away the house. But when you're struggling and they might have something and you might have something, then it's what do you think? I tried this didn't work.
Yeah, but even drivers. I mean, I think you just like Ryan said, just talk. I mean, especially if you're out testing or at a club race, I bet. If Connor and Brent are at the track, even if they're helping a client and you're out there and you just strike up a conversation and you just say, "Hey man, you're behind me. What'd you think?" I bet they'd give you a one-liner that could stick, just like Ryan said, that you'd be like, "Wait, maybe I need to try that." But if you're not willing to ask the question, it's going to be hard for you to really get better.
There's a lot to that because there's a lot of guys that I don't know if they're I never wanted to ask Nick Neary or anybody if they saw anything in my driving, but the one time they would help me. And I mean, there are kids that come up to me and they're like, "Hey man, you were behind me for a few laps. What did I do wrong?" And I'm like, "Which kart were you?" And they're like, "Oh, this one." I'm like, "Yeah, in 4, you were kind of going pretty wide. You could probably, tighten that up a little bit, or you're braking a little bit early." And there's a lot. I think there's a lot to that. Cause I don't say a lot of chassis stuff or whatever, but I will help. If somebody asks about driving, I will. That's the one thing I will always kind of help on. If you have a question or anything, I'm always open to talk about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when someone at a national race or something comes up and they're like, "Dude, I'm completely lost. Can you watch my video?" That's one of the things where I'm sure Ryan and Brent and Brandon can agree. I mean, if you have time, you're gonna do it. I mean, you want the sport to be better. You're all there to get better. So if you can help someone, you're gonna help them, and vice versa. If you need help, then don't be afraid to ask. And the worst, even if they say no, the worst answer you can get is a no. So it's not like you're going to die or something if they say no. So
yeah, there was
don't be afraid.
USPKS Ocala race that I ran really good at. I was Friday practice and I came off and I was on my own, but at that point I'd gotten to know everybody through the announcing, and Doty came up to me and he's like, "Xander, you're going in 10 feet too wide, turning 10 feet too late to the freaking showcase. Get down low onto the rubber like everybody else." And so I was like, "Oh, I guess you go narrow there." And I went narrow there and all of a sudden picked up 2/10 and then ran good the rest of the weekend. So in a classic Mike Doty way, where he was pissed off because he was watching me screw up lap after lap after lap, one specific corner. He was like, "Dude, you suck." But he only came out of his way to talk to me because I went out of my way to talk to everybody else whenever I did the announcing. A lot of people probably don't know how I got to the point where we were at. And a big part of that, I think, looking back, was once I got to the point where everyone was seeing my face regularly and I was doing the announcing for races, I both enjoyed it and tried to make a point to go and get to know every single team and every single driver I could talk to at the end of the race day and walk around when everyone's packing up, because I didn't have backup to do. I just put the mic away. But it made it easier to do that. But if you make rounds and you go and be social with people, that stuff comes around back to you because you just make friends with people. So That's another really good point too. Now we do have some good questions that have come in. This one was from Mike Smith here. Chris, he was mentioned about not just cutting laps, but having an agenda for those laps. As coaches, how do you prioritize what to work on from your students? Here, Chris, I guess this one's targeted to you, so why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you just have to evaluate every driver separately. You know, some drivers are really good at braking and they catch braking on really quickly. Some drivers are timid and aren't willing to push the limit of the kart, and you can see it warming up tires. You can see it right away. The minute they go on track, they're not warming up their tires enough. They're probably not comfortable with the how sideways they can get the kart, simple kart control. So it's just that you just have to evaluate every driver a little bit differently, come up with a plan and know how many days, how many hours you have to work on it, and go from there.
And this one, we'll see how much of a debate I and Ryan get into with Chris on this one here. Talking Ricky Worley said, I see there's a lot of discussions on karting being too focused on being a feeder to cars when it's really to the detriment of the sport itself. But karting doesn't have a real pro level like two-wheel stuff, for example. So I will leave this off since it's my show before we get into it, as Chris shakes his head at me. But the truth is right. There is no pro level yet. Do I think that we have something that could be like grassroots motorsport that is no different than where a lot of short track oval racing is in the U.S. to bigger oval racing series? I think it's possible. I think we've got a really, really good on-track raw racing product. The events aren't polished. They're not in that format. The current state of the sport's not there. There are really, really good drivers that are coming, and I think there's potential for it to be that. But that's the other half of why we're talking about this, right? We're not talking about cars as much here. That's a whole different debate too, and a whole hour and a half, 2 hour long debate of how you kind of manage your career once you go to cars, what ladder series to go to, how long to spend in them, how to test, where to go with all that. That's a whole other ladder to climb when you make that switch over, and if you make that switch over. But for 99% of people in karting, whether you get to the national scene or not, that stuff isn't in the cards for you. So the idea we wanted to do with this show here tonight was to go over just climbing the karting ladder specifically and getting to the point where you are at least as big as you're able to spend, as high of a level as you're able to race, you're at a level where you're competitive. And so that's why we have all these guys on here. You have Brent and Connor, who are super, super talented for their generation and two of the biggest names when it comes to it. And obviously it's worked out really well for you guys, because not only do you guys, it was possible with circumstances to get you to race when you were younger and in as many formats as possible. But now you've got some fantastic support from KHI management and sponsors and partners that are helping getting you guys to the racetrack to race the car stuff. But that's a 1 in a million type, not 1 in a million, but it's a very small percentage that all that falls the right way. So as much as using it for a feeder series to that, when most of the go-karts sold are adult LO206s, I get your comment, Ricky, and trust me, there's sides to both of it here. So I won't be the only one to say my piece. I'm going to open the floor up now of what anyone wants to get into it, but that's a whole debate there. So Chris,
real quickly, there is professional karting.
There is that too.
It just happens to not be in America because the industry isn't based in America and we don't have major American manufacturers anymore. And it's plain and simple. Where is motocross racing the biggest in the world? Where are most the biggest paid athletes in motocross? America, because that's where the industry is. Yes, the manufacturers are elsewhere, but that's where the main part of the industry is. Okay, it's not like it used to be the glory days where people were getting paid 90, 100,000 euro to go race go-karts, but there's still 10 to 15, 20 maybe people in karting that get paid to race go-karts. I mean, Ryan gets paid to race go-karts. He's a professional. It may be tied with his coaching and his mentorship, but he's still paid to race a go-kart. Same with Brandon when he jumps in a go-kart. He's paid to race a go-kart. It doesn't matter if it's tied to something else. I mean, that's half the people that get paid to race cars. It's tied to coaching a gentleman driver. They're not really paid to race. They're paid to coach, and they get to race for free. Yeah. So there is still professional karting. We just don't have it in America right now. We haven't had it since the mid-90s. Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever get back there, but you'll never get away from that trajectory into car racing, nor should we, because it is what keeps karting at the level that it is. Yeah.
It can be both, right? I mean, that's how NASCAR should be, right? With and that's why they're struggling with some of the series with and I think the Road to Indy struggles with it too when you look at the turnouts from 10 years ago in Star Mazda and F2000, where you had 50% of the field that ran that stuff as if it was an SCCA series, and 50% being ladder drivers. And the same with where ARCA and the NASCAR, what's now ARCA East and ARCA West, what was K&N, is really what super late model racing is now, and that's why Brent's doing. You're doing supers now, right, Brent? Or are you just doing late model so far?
Just pros right now.
Okay. Yeah. But still, like, that's where all those guys are going. And that's where there's career guys, or you can call it career or whatever, guys that stay in that series. I think the best ladder series that are healthy are destination series as well at the same time. Connor is not going to be a global MX5 Cup series driver for the rest of his life. But there are guys that are only ever going to run global MX5 Cup. And that's a lot of the back half of that field. And that's why that field is 30 plus and the Indy Lights field is 10, At least that's the way I see it with some of it. Like, I think there's a mix, Ryan, I know you got thoughts on it. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's a mix. I mean, the sport of karting is like the biggest graveyard for great drivers. I mean, it's super frustrating to see because you have, you can just go down the list of amazing drivers that I've had to decide don't race ever again or go take the risk of doing car stuff. And I'm one of the fortunate guys that, one of the very few that have been able to make it into somewhat of a livelihood. But I was forced with that same issue where it was like, I either go, try and spend a whole lot of money and take the risk and do the car scene, which, some guys can do, or I go do karting and try and do that avenue as well. And if that didn't work out, you're back to square one. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are stuck in that. And I think there's a lot of talent that gets left behind because of the industry. At least I think right now it's not really seen as like a path. And I wish we could have it more to where people could see themselves making a career in this sport instead of either I go to cars or I'm bust. I think it's like you said, there's a balance where it's between two, where it is the stepping stone to cars. But I would like to see one day a series, an organization run it correctly to where there is an avenue for drivers to be able to pursue karting as a career, like they would, IMSA stuff, where you're racing for, like Chris said, where you're racing to help somebody else and you're racing for free and you're making money. I would love to see that the sport grow to something more like that.
Yeah.
And there's that in all motorsports, right? Rico Abreu got plucked by Toyota, and got pushed up the NASCAR ladder for a little bit. And now he's still making a living racing, dirt racing across the country. It's grassroots. It's smaller following, had he been able to be as successful in a NASCAR car that they were all searching for the next Kyle Larson, with TRD. Had he been able to make it, he'd probably be making more money than where he's at now. But he's still making money. He's racing. He's selling his merch line, and he's doing a heck of a job doing it. So, Tony, how did you manage to get fully in the darkness? We got in a whole conversation, and you were over there just with a black screen. I don't even know why we keep inviting you.
Well, it just happens that way sometimes. The fucking phone died, and I plugged it back in. Just happened to be in my little Zen garden here, and I did not turn the light on because I just plugged my phone in. But I'm listening, and I'm just appreciating everything you guys are saying. It's good.
Man, it's so hard to rag on you when you talk to us nicely like that. Can you cuss me out?
That's the nicest I've ever heard Tony talk in his whole life.
Yeah,
all right, well,
that Zen garden does something. All right, there we go. That Zen garden is doing something to you.
Yeah,
I feel a little better there.
Okay,
we're gonna wrap up this last little bit here with a couple closing comments that we had in the last little bit of news, and then we'll come back and thank everybody for coming on. We did have some other news that wrong one. Sorry,
Already gone over that.
Yeah, let me get over there. No, not over that. There's more. Playing on through it here. So first and foremost, wanted to wish a happy trails to Gary Lawson, as he announced and Comet Kart Sales announced that he's going to be getting ready to move his family back over to Ohio. With some big news. He's a mainstay with them. There's a full press release on the Comet Kart Sales Facebook page. I wanted to show some love to those guys. Comet Kart Sales, the Dismore family, and obviously the Adams family all together. Newcastle Motorsports Park and Comet Kart Sales are karting mainstays that have been around for decades, and they've been huge.
Show
in
Ryan's
the sport,
donuts,
and Gary as
goddammit.
well. I forgot to download them actually.
I knew it.
I forgot to download his
He keeps freaking out his fucking. You know what? To be honest, I want to see his goddamn donuts.
Hold up. I got it right here.
Download your donuts.
Right.
Look at this guy. Put him on the
Let me
screen,
see
Trevor.
it.
Put
Let
him
me
on the
see it.
screen. Let's see how good
Let
it
me
is.
see
Don't
it.
put me on
That's
the
his
screen.
first donut. That's his first donut in life.
Look at
Let's
this.
see it.
Look at this
Oh,
guy.
Is that a
here.
cue
No
ball?
hands,
I was gonna say, what
Oh.
helmet is that?
Come
Yeah,
on. I had to
yeah.
borrow
What do you
somebody's
got?
helmet.
No,
What do you
Show
show it
got
again.
there,
Why did
man?
you go off
Oh
track?
my
Hold on.
God.
Hold on. Why'd you go off track with the donut? Show it again.
Because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know
Okay,
what I'm
well, do
doing.
it
I
again.
went
Let's-
off track. Come
Let's
on.
see it again.
The fact that
Show it again.
the fact that I went hands up surprised me. I was doing it, and I'm like, wow, this is going so well. And I was like, let's put the hands up.
Oh,
And it was like,
I'm gonna go
it's
off
working.
track. Okay, perfect. Good job. That was Orlando. Good job. Good job.
Yes.
And then the last little bit of news that we had on a more somber note was on a lesser note here was about Alex Watsky, who is a road racer. So for road racing karting, that's when they have karting on big car tracks. He was racing in the CES event over at Gateway. I think it's Gateway Motorsports Park, or maybe I don't think it's Gateway International Raceway. But unfortunately, had a massive crash over the weekend. I saw this in e-karting news, and so I wanted to shout out to Rob and David for them for putting the post up and the linking to the GoFundMe. He obviously he is I don't want to say okay, but he's conscious. He's making phone calls to family, friends, customers. However, he's suffered multiple injuries. They have a GoFundMe established. If you guys want to help out, or if you know someone that would be willing to help out a fellow racer that unfortunately suffered a rough crash over the weekend, we want to wish the absolute best to Alex in his recovery, and I'd love to get more info, and I'm going to be reaching out to him as the time progresses and once he hopefully begins his road to recovery. But the raw reality of the sport is there is still a danger in racing in any degree, and the road racing guys, I got to give them a lot of credit and a lot of kudos and a lot of guts, because they're going faster than we are with concrete walls and guardrails sometimes around some of their racetracks. So it is a very unforgiving discipline, and we want to wish the best to him. So if you want to donate to the GoFundMe, I'll put the GoFundMe link in the comments section below after this episode is finished. You can also find that GoFundMe. There it is right there. You can send the GoFundMe. We've got it here. But it's also available on eKarting News' Facebook page as well if you'd like to donate and check out Alex's recovery. So I wanted to make sure we gave some love to that.
You should make this show an hour and a half and go 3 more minutes, because literally it's 1 hour 27 minutes. Like, what do
you want to talk about, Tony? What's got on your mind on Zen Garden?
I felt like I missed 10 minutes of it. I feel like
you did.
He didn't
That's
say
not our
shit.
problem.
He's super quiet. My buddy BC Mulder's on the show. Let him say whatever he wants.
All right.
Connor's still in the same seat playing the same goddamn game he's always played. I mean, just
What is he playing?
y'all say whatever y'all want to say.
What do you got, Brent? Why don't you kick it off here?
2 more minutes, Mulders. Get it.
Say something.
I just want to go back to the coaching standpoint. I really feel like
I love this.
some people hated on the sort of the data standpoint also, and I really feel like that is a big tool. I disagree with some of it for the kids' standpoint. Like for me, like they tried to raise me with a lot of data, and for me as a kid, I feel like for anyone now, still like they just look at it as a bunch of squiggly lines until they're more developed. It took me a long time to really understand what it meant. So I really feel like that the GoPro is super useful. Sitting down with him and talking him through that instead of worrying so much about data.
Shameless plug. Stay tuned for the next Norberg Nation video.
Get out of here. Kick him out of the show. Get him out of here.
Whatever,
get him out of here. This
man.
is ridiculous. Get him out. Yeah, get him out. Screw that
Squiggly
guy.
line.
Get Ryan out of here, man. All right.
He's a squiggly liner. Don't worry.
Come on. Where is it? There it is.
He loves
This guy's
squiggly
right.
lines.
Other side.
We got to get you a new logo, Ryan.
All right. See. Oh,
That's
here.
like 1999.
It is, bro.
Yeah.
Come on,
Clip
help.
art.
I need help.
It's a clip art, dude.
He needs some help. Well, I mean, you're not an offset driver is the problem. You know, you're not part of Team Wehrheim over here.
He
so you
did
can't
not.
be asking
Hey,
for help.
he denied me in the beginning, but I'm always a Ryan fan.
Yeah, but isn't the RPG whole deal all their shoots are offset at this point, aren't they?
They're starting to be, yes. They're
They're
starting.
starting to be. Okay. Did you start it?
No, I did not start it.
Oh, you didn't. But do you
He's
wear
an
one now?
OP guy.
I got the design, and then everybody else. did the
Oh,
offset with
okay.
My design. But it wasn't my design. It was Howie's design, who works for Offset. So it's basically an Offset OMP.
Connor, what are you looking at over there? Your screen just got really white.
Yeah, I know. But I'm
That's
not in
his
full
face.
screen.
All right, it's an hour and a half.
Oh,
We gotta
see,
go.
Connor's
All right,
gotta
we gotta
go get
get
food.
it.
Everyone's
See
out of
ya.
here. Later. Everyone's gone. Thank you guys for tuning in to KC Happy Hour. We'll talk to you guys next week. This is episode 42. My name's Xander Clements. Another good show. As always, send your comments. If you have any messages or anything you'd like to ask us, on the show or any other topics you'd like to talk about, whether you want to talk about the car racing ladder. Obviously, we do a lot of media stuff. I'd love to have some shows kind of going over what we've learned about social media, media marketing, stuff like that. And there's a whole lot of other stuff we can talk about. Next week, we won't do it too much of that because we've got a doubleheader coming that we got to prep for. The Stars Championship Series, over 130 plus pre-entries right now. We're going to have their whole pre-entry list next week. The Texas Sprint Series is also having a massive pre-entry list right now. They're still a week out from Houston. There's a CKNA South race in speed sports and racing going on around the country. So thanks as always for tuning in, guys. We'll see you guys next week on the show. And thanks again for sending in all your submissions over the last few weeks. We enjoy it.